Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 320. I am your host, Lauren Gray, and keeping with our new and established format for this starting this September is one topic, 1 hour. And yes, I'm still doing this until I get my other co hosts coordinated as to what scheduled times they would like to assume the mantle of hosting their own show with their own guest hosts to it and their own topic. We thought we'd keep some continuity for the start of this program and keep the burden off of our co hosts by saying, "Hey, tomorrow, next week, can you do this together?" We said, "Hey, you know what? We'll take care of it for the first month." So, excuse me. With that in mind, our topic this week is about how to map a successful fourth quarter strategy. Being that this is the tail end of September, and officially this past week, this past Wednesday to be exact, fall rolled in. There is a initial cold front that has moved through. There's some cooler temperatures north of where I'm at. I'm in Southwest Florida, so we do not have that. We're still at the peak or close to peak of hurricane season. So for us, even though we might dry out a little bit in temperatures, we still have storm concerns in some ways until the end of November. But with that in mind, there is a change of season, there is a change in attitude of travel, and there's a change in perspective of what we're traveling for. With that, fourth quarter has its own values and it has its own challenges depending upon where you are located. The challenges, of course, are weather driven primarily. As we begin to roll into the fall season, then forward into the winter season, there is different demands on how the weather shifts and changes. There's expectations on places where it does snow. Of course, obviously, the season is ramping up. For places like Florida and the South, our season begins to come in with the snowbirds. As we like to say, we can tell the change in the seasons by the change in the color of the license plates. There is a migration of people that travel for durations of time, seasonalities that begin to come into play come this fourth quarter. Also, with that, that means where people leave and where they go means with lesser business or more business. And how that has changed for us this year in particular, given the COVID pandemic and the Delta variant that we've been still struggling through, will determine how that affects our corporate business travel, our convention travel, our events travel. These things we know. I don't have to reiterate all the concerns we have in the business news right now for this, but we know that they have fundamentally changed our business mix as to our sources of business. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. How do we create a successful fourth quarter strategy for 2021? This is, as we often say about any season in particular, a unique season because of all these considerations that are different. So let's kind of break some things down that we are anticipating about fourth quarter and things, of course, a lot that we don't know. The things that we're anticipating, corporate business, the budget for 2021 as it was made for most businesses didn't probably exist very much for business travel. So any business travel will probably be a budget breaking item for most businesses. Not that they're unwilling to travel or unwanting to travel and may not have the particular need to travel. As it is, it's not been truly budgeted for. So as circumstances come up and the need for corporate travel begins to happen for them, they will go under a closer scrutiny as to the validation of its value since it was not a budgeted number for most companies. So planning for corporate travel or business travels, there's a lot of conferences going fourth quarter prior to holidays and intermixed with holidays, I should say. And that's under question. Even now, this month, as we look at the fact that we are looking at the changes in the Delta variants progression in our society, there is the ups and downs concerns if you're running an event or conference like High Tech or HSMAI's Rock or marketing programs. The attendance factor, of course, they were smart enough to have gauged that in their anticipation of attendance, but those things are always a concern. When that was first built for them, the Delta variant hadn't made an impact on people's travels as much. We were in the throes of a bonanza of summer travel. And as all of us in the industry know, during summer, we normally have a business cycle of summer travel, those with families and children that are out of school, and the demand goes higher for transient travel, family travel. But it was abnormally larger than that because of the pent-up demand that the COVID pandemic has created for us, where we weren't able to travel until we were vaccination or vaccines came into play. And because of that, it was overwhelming on the demand. We've had the discussion on this show many times as to the impact, both positive and negative, on that, and how it has affected our business budgeting process. Last week's discussion on how to create a dynamic budget is a reflection of that. So, fourth quarter. There are certain known givens in fourth quarters that exist for us, regardless of your religion and regardless of your regionality. Um, there is holidays. depending upon your religious preference and also just the nationalism of your country in question, whether it be Canada and or the United States, since the border has opened up for vaccination travel. Okay. And good news, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is the Biden administration's beginning opening up, or at least planned opening up, I should say, of the European market, the ability to travel back and forth for non essential travel. The European market had opened up to the US for us to travel to it as non essential travel. That was put into question because of our inability to open it up for them to come for the same reasons. That seems to now have a benchmark of an anticipated date where that's going to happen. And as such, there is the possibility of a European travel coming to the United States that had been restricted up to this point. Not that it couldn't be done by some ways, but mostly in the direct connect value, it was very hard, if not possible, to go over and do. So that's an impact for the fourth quarter. But holidays are probably the key linchpin associated with fourth quarter activities for business demand. Some things that are anticipated. So that's the known. The unknown, or the anticipated, I should say, is that given the restriction on our travel capabilities, and even though some of it was satiated by summer travel, you still have the fact that people want to connect with other people, family, friends, and so forth, that they may not have taken the time either over their summer travels or even if they didn't travel during the summer. Um, and so, where a normal Thanksgiving visit would have been maybe for the duration of 1, 2, or 3 days, and it may have been accommodated by staying with a family member, given circumstances of those that are vaccinated, not vaccinated, susceptibility, and so forth, that ability to stay with family may be constrained. And so the need on hotel rooms for holidays, anticipated in my perspective, will grow because for the safety of all concerned, it's best that there's not a tight density, long period of time together. And that doesn't account for the differences in opinion as to being vaccinated or not vaccinated, or preferences of masks and not masks, and all the things that have been unfortunately politicized in this terrible tragedy. So, hotel demand will probably be higher in the holidays. Thanksgiving will be our first example of that, than before. And also, the length of stay consideration is probably going to be a higher demand for a longer length of stay. If someone's going through the process of travel, whether it be flying or driving, and for the distance order and what have you, the duration is probably going to be extended to take full advantage of that travel opportunity. So, what may have been a 2 or 3 day stay due to the motivation of the holiday might turn into a 3, 5, 7 day stay, or even longer, or a more adventurous stay where it's a part of it, but the duration of their entire travel is extended. So they may stay in a location about the same time last year, but the ability to travel to and from may be elongated so they get to take advantage of the fact that they're out of town during that time. So either way, there's the impact of duration of stay in the market and or pass through travel from your market for those who are traveling between point A and point B, and you're in the middle. So that might be a anticipated value proposition for your Thanksgiving. Christmas, same impact, same reasons. There may be the expanded demand for length of stays and or durability of travel during that time as well. Halloween is not necessarily a travel holiday, but it does create a travel opportunity. Halloweens have traditionally been more of a local enjoyment. Um, from that, people might find it that they want to go all in and decide that they want to have an elevator home, so to speak. We've had that analogy many times before in our industry, where they can enjoy themselves, not worry about driving or getting home or Ubering or taxiing or anything else, but rather the hotel's there, the party's here, and it's just going up to the room and crashing for the night. So there might be a value proposition to the holiday depending upon what your market is doing for that holiday. Down here in Florida, we have lots of amusement parks, Disney World, Universal, so forth, in Orlando in particular, that have great events associated with Halloween, in which it's a travel destination value. That if I'm going to go up and enjoy their spectaculars and everything else that they do for the holiday, it's much easier for me, given the duration, it's a few hours drive, to actually stay and enjoy the events and then make it back if that's my choice. That goes beyond the fact of walking around the neighborhoods and doing trick or treat. So, the impacts of the holidays, given the pandemic and given the impact of what the pandemic is doing on people's travels preferences and safeties, will have a difference on length of stays and durability of their travel plans out of this whole entire process. So those are the easy ones. That's fourth quarter easy. Those are things you can put your hat on. Other things that are going into fourth quarter, we're already being told via news outlets and so forth, and we have been going through this process for several months now, based on availability of distribution or product availability. We've heard of everything from ships sitting in a harbor for a few weeks waiting to unload their crates to shortages of crates to get back because we're buying so much, but we're not bringing back the empty crates or whatever to the distribution countries that we're in shortages. And we're already being told from a retail perspective that order now, buy now, because later might mean not available or longer wait than the holiday is going to allow you to have in presents or products come in after the time that you actually wanted them. So, retail perspective, why I bring this up for hotels, it has always been a strong point for hotels around retail components back in the days of when malls were the popular hub for retail. That it was a chance to go over and um, shop till you drop, stay and shop. If you're not residing or living by a large retail place and or stores that you like to shop with were not in your market, that was an excuse to go to the market that did, and it was an excuse to stay at a hotel that was by those retail outlets or nearby at the very least, so that you could go and do all of your shopping firsthand, brick and mortar. Black Friday when you stood in line waiting for that, midnight opening of the door or 4 a.m. opening of the door, whatever it was. Well, we know those days have passed. We know that for many reasons. It was happening before COVID already, where there was the online ability to purchase. There was the dilution of it being a gathered single point day after Thanksgiving retail event to a who can announce it earlier than the other competitors, the Targets and the back in the day, JCPenney, Sears, and all the rest of them that don't exist anymore. Um, the Walmarts and so forth of their Black Friday specials, and Amazon and having Amazon Prime Day and everything else. Well, that has changed the retail spectrum tremendously. Flip that over with shortages and possible delivery delays. The fact that you can go into a local business and see the product on the shelf and have it available right then to take off the shelf and package and have it has a new value to it again, a renewed value, I should say, because it allows you to not have the issues that we're being warned about. The oh, it's not going to get delivered and or it's not going to go over and be available or whatever if you're going to your local markets. This is a huge opportunity for local retailers to establish themselves back into the market that says, why worry about whether it's out of stock? Why worry if it can't be delivered in time? You show up at our store and if it's on our shelf, it's in your it's under your tree or for your holiday. Um, that has a high value, and that has a high value for hoteliers to reestablish the value for the retail interest that the fourth quarter brings for holidays. Because if you are in a place that has wonderful local shops, it's like the American Express Shop Local programs and so forth, where there's a lot of very unique, crafty, and or local unique places. That's a feature ability that your hotel has to say, come stay and truly take your time and enjoy and window shop. It sounds like an old term, and I guess it is an old term. Window shop used to be from the perspective of walking down Main Street, USA, and all the retailers had their products in display in their front window casings. Well, that is probably a passe statement now because there's no such thing that really runs that way anymore. But window shopping is still the term that came from it, and that was that you were looking around and seeing the product on the shelf. We've seen many outlets like the Best Buys of the world and so forth, where they're really a service area, minimal inventory, representation of some product, but they're more of a pickup place for which you can order based on their inventory that's centrally hubbed, which is a cost savings for them. Just like the Amazon program, it's about, hey, you tell us what you want, we'll get it to you. Well, we given the circumstances, don't have that as a given this fourth quarter. It's a question mark this fourth quarter, availability and deliverability. So why not take advantage of trying to isolate and solicit your value proposition for people to come into your market to experience the unique retail components of your market and enjoy it in a very leisurely, happy way without feeling like they got to drive in at 5 in the morning to make it there and then try to drive in the middle of the night to make it home because they only wanted to spend one day there. So their hotels have a value for that. And your restaurants do too. Exercising the option for them to come experience your restaurant where you're not in their market, but they can come and enjoy your market. So that collaboration between hotels and restaurants should be a strong one, especially for hotels that don't have restaurants because you're able to solicit a value proposition that you don't yourself offer, but you can offer because of collaboration. Creating that relationship with the restaurant that you can offer a value proposition if they stay at your hotel, they get a value proposition at the restaurant that you're highlighting or in collaboration with. Excuse me, I'm drinking coffee. So those are some of the generalized aspects of fourth quarter. Let's get into some more of the direct components of the strategies for this. Um, this lends itself to earlier conversations we've had on the show as to the progression of communication that marketing provides. From a revenue management perspective, you have optimum booking window, which is the days of highest density conversions of booking rooms. Then you have, of course, their arrival date, duration of stay, and departures. Those are factual points of data that revenue managers use. Marketers are inclusive of that, but also precluding that. They are also in the discovery phase. Their three components of communication with guests are in the discovery, education, and conversion phases for simplicity's sake. There's fractions of those, but those are the simplest, the largest three categories. Depending upon where you're trying to engage the dialogue of those that potentially would be converting in purchases with you, there's a value proposition of cost. The larger volume of people that you talk to that aren't necessarily specifically interested in you, but are generally interested in maybe your relationship to what they're interested in, is a very expensive proposition. You're paying for a lot of eyes without a lot of conversions. Hence the reason why most marketing strategies are closest to the point of conversion, ZMOD, the moment of transaction, that moment when people are willing to say, I want to stay here, click, or this is what I want to buy, click, because affords in most people's minds the highest value of what they spend versus what they earn from that spend. It also is the highest competition and the most expensive place to be in the sense of the amount of money you have to spend to make that happen. The most expensive place really to spend is in the discovery phase, that high up discovery. If you look at it as from a funnel, which I don't like referring to, but if you look at it from an aggregation of numbers, that's the place that the OTAs and brands usually reside in their spends. Awareness. We're here. This is what we have to offer. We don't know what you're interested in, but we have everything you might be interested in. Here's things. And there's filterings that can go along with making sure that you try to optimize your exposure to people most likely to continue the interest in you, the education phase. And that means that if you have a resort in the Florida Keys, you're not going to be advertising for people that are necessarily looking to go to New York. That that aspect of the difference might be a defining difference in marketing for you to only want to market to people that are looking for a tropical experience. And I say that with an asterisk because that's not really true. When I used to have to worry about marketing for hotels in the Keys, one of my strongest and greatest competitors were not the Keys or other Caribbean destinations or island destinations or southern destinations. They were mountain destinations of Aspen and Vail, because the demographics of the people that were considering what I was offering based on the product that I had were people deciding whether they wanted the tropical vacation or they wanted the mountain vacation. And it was a contrast. So we had a symbiotic relationship. The demographics were the commonality to this, not the product. And that's where I'm coming up with our fourth quarter discussion today. Is it's not just about fulfilling what you know is people interested in your particular market. Right now, some of the Northeast markets, they're highlighted for the fact that it's the transition of the leaves. And there's certain places, depending upon certain exact times of the month, that the leaves are at its prime for what people are looking to travel to see. And that changes as the season changes. And I know that this year has been different as it can be, in the sense that because of climates and changes in what's been happening with weather, they are not, some places that were prime are not prime, and some places that weren't prime are prime, and some places are faster and slower than others. And it's really, if you're really into it, you have to very much keep in tune with that. I had a conversation with one of our clients in Vancouver where we're coming up in a time of year for winter in November where there's a place that people love doing the super big surfing waves, and there's places to stay to do that. And it's something that normally is slow for that time of year for that market, but they're at peak because that's the thing to do. They go and they surf, and that's where they want to go and stay. So every place has its reason and its niche. What you have to do from your perspective of your particular product is first look for the fat fruit, the easy stuff, which is who does come this time of year. Um, what do they come for? So this is a progression of communicate of questions. Who are they? What are they traveling for? And what is it that they do when they're here? How long do they stay? How do they tend to normally spend? How much, what rate resistance do they have? What do they spend for rates? Which hotels in our market do better in comparison? Your SWOT analysis, sweat, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, risk, um, threats, excuse me, um, as to who gets the lion's share. Is it just an economy travel where people are just needing to get into the market? They're not looking for the amenities of a full service hotel, or is it a full service hotel mentality where people are there and they want the ability to have everything there, so it precludes them from really venturing out into all the things like culinary adventures, soft adventures, cultural adventures, whatever. Is it event driven? Are there things that are going on in your market that draw people to you? Conferences, music fests, arts and crafts fests, seasonal changes, seasonal events outside of your holidays. You need to make a list of these things. Here's all the reasons people travel. Here's usually who travels and what do they usually do when they're here and how do they spend. So we understand their length of stays, their ADRs. And then you start cracking that list a little bit differently into, okay, so we know demographically who they are. They're family constructed, they travel with family or don't travel with family, the purpose of their travel based on all the things we just discussed. But where do they come from? And how do we correlate where they come from to how much do they spend? If I'm coming from Boston, I may have an ADR averaging from people from Boston uh, of a certain level compared to people if they were traveling from Washington, D.C., they might have a higher level of ADR that they're average willing to spend. And is that demographically based or is it geographically based? You ask these questions, you make these differences. This is where the collaboration we talk about between marketing and revenue managers is so critical because the revenue manager has that data. They can look at the guest folios historically and say, here's the ADR for this time frame. Let's pick the fourth quarter in its entirety. This is the average ADR for the entire fourth quarter. Okay, geographically, where did they come from? Well, we take the zip codes and we can put it into a map, a heat map. It's very simple, easy to do. And from there, you can say, okay, so where did the people geographically come from that spend what rate? And now you've correlated their rate resistance, if anything, for lack of a better way of defining it, to the geography. That people in Boston pay more or less than people in DC, or more or less than people in Philadelphia, or more or less than people in Atlanta. And from that, you can say, okay, so where is the fat fruit, easy things for us to chase? Well, obviously, if there's certain markets that we know have a higher propensity for higher ADR, and that's one of our goals that we've created, okay, then we can say, well, let's go for those geographic markets that we already know have a more acceptable level of higher ADR that works towards our scheme. And then that's when you go in as marketers and say, okay, so what do we know about these markets? And we can look at the traffic from those geographic areas to our website. We can look at the traffic associated with all of our marketing channels geographically from that program as to how do our emails work that are related for them. Now, if you don't have this ready at your fingertips, like, well, wait a minute, how do I get what emails are from where? Emails are correlated with zip codes. Zip codes are in your guest folios. You can create those data sources segmented out by a simple Excel sheet that says, here's all my people that stayed with me fourth quarter last year. Now, granted, 2020 is not necessarily your prime year. As we've talked about 2 shows ago about aggregating your data and creating an average weighted mean, take it over 20, 19, and 18 and take your entire people that have stayed fourth quarter 2018, 2019, 2020 and put them into a single batch together. That will get, and of course, there's going to be duplicates and crossovers. They get washed. And what you have is an aggregate perspective of who's traveling in the fourth quarter. From that, you then say geographically, how does that correlate? Okay, and how does that match to the regionalities based on rate that revenue management shared with us? Great. Now, let's look at what channels were successful. Now, marketers can go in and say, let's look at our CRM program. When we send emails out of the people we know are from different regions, what was the opening rates? What was the conversion rates for email? What was the conversion rate for paid campaigns? What was the conversion rate for paid social? What was the organic social? And we begin to create a picture of what the most productive channels are associated with those particular markets. We know that Boston reacts better with emails. They had a higher opening rate and a higher conversion rate. Philadelphia had a higher paid click rate. They engaged and converted more from our paid programs on Google than they did anything else. So now we have a perspective of what tool to use for which market that we're looking to approach. The other missing pieces or needed or helpful pieces, not needed, but helpful pieces to this is what's called lead time. The revenue management is limited in the sense that they look at booking window, arrival, duration, departure. The booking window is helpful in this case to a certain degree. We know the optimum time, that booking window of optimum conversion, historically, based on the aggregate data we just talked about. And we can say, well, they are roughly 21 to 24 days out is when they're really interested in buying for this date sequence. This week's here, this last 2 weeks of October, first 2 weeks of November, whatever it is, they're 21, 24 days out prior to that, or 27 days out, or 14 days out, or 9 days out, whatever it is, it's a defined quantity. That's helpful, but not helpful to the marketer as much as knowing when they start looking at us, the discovery and education time. And that goes from our analytics from the marketing side. And that is, let's go in geographically. Let's take Boston as a concentric conversation to this. We're looking at Boston. We've determined that paid Google was a great traffic builder conversion value for Boston. They have a propensity for the ADR we're looking for as an early start to the marketing program. And we're looking to sell them for the first 2 weeks in November. And we know that their booking window is 21 days out. So that means they start heavy booking the first week of October until they arrive the first day of November. But if you look at the metrics from marketing as to when did they discover and start interacting with us, you found out that they started looking at us in August. They started educating themselves the middle of September, and they decided to purchase that peak booking time at the beginning of October. So now we have stepped back farther. So now for us to impact the first 2 weeks of November, we're talking about programs that start in August at this point. That's why it's so critical when we talk to people about marketing. It's like, well, I'm so busy right now during season, I'm going to shut off my marketing. It's not affecting the current marketing that you're doing. You're the belle of the ball. Everybody wants to stay with you during your peak season. What you're shutting off is your ability to communicate with the people after season that aren't staying with you during peak, that you've lost that time that they're discovering you, especially when you're very popular. When people, oh, have you not been there yet? You got to go there. And they go to look to find you and they struggle to find you because you're not pushing yourself up in the market. And so they find somebody else other than you. And you've lost that because you darkened yourself during a time when you have the highest interest in yourself. So that's why it's never good to shut your marketing off during your peak business, because you're really shutting it off for the time after your peak business when people are finding you when you're most in demand and not doing so. So, with that in mind, giving our current example about Boston, we're now at the beginning of August. Well, what do we talk about in August? Well, it's not, and we're talking about Boston in August, okay? And we know that paid Google is that. So we look at the campaigns that worked best. When did they work best? So you're looking at your Google ads for what you did in Boston, what ran. And we know that they already have a propensity for a little bit higher ADR, which is why we're looking at them and as a focus, because we want that higher ADR as our strategy component to the first 2 weeks of November. And we want to develop and optimize what people will want to book in the first 2 weeks of November from Boston. So we see that a lot of it has to do with events around weekends. It's a weekend driving. The 2 weeks are artificially skewed to a heavy density of weekends and less on weekdays. Now, again, this is because you've aggregated 2018, 2019, 2020 data. That might be skewed to the fact of when people felt comfortable. And of course, there's corporate travel in there as well. That doesn't exist at this particular time. So you have to factor out what you know as current influences. You know that whatever that travel that was gotten for those periods, if it's corporate, remove it from the conversation as being a questionable entity. There might be some, it's not a blackout, but it's not the driver of the market strategy, which is what we're dealing with at this point. So you black that out and you see what's left. Is there a chance to expand it and grow it, or is it just for the value that it potentially is? And now we're talking about the influences of pent up demand. Is it enough to make people travel those first 2 weeks in November, or are they saving up their coins to travel during the holidays, like we discussed? These are evaluation procedures that between marketing, revenue management, and sales has to have as a conversation. What's the merit of our data? Is it really applicable to our strategy that we're trying to create? and discount or approve, put a ranking. Okay, I give this a forced ranking. I give this as the number one thing that will probably likely for market demand. This is our number two thing that is our highest market demand, and our number three, number four until we run out of things. And that creates a forced ranking as to what you're going to prioritize. And if from that, and continue with our example, it's determined that a weekend offer, okay, with an amenity of breakfast, because that historically seemed to be of value to people, especially in the reviews and feedback, and also in the engagement of the packages you offered over the course of the past 3 years. That if you offer the weekend deal, okay, maybe you can put a fence. Arrival Fridays only, departure only not Sundays, put some gates on it or whatever. Those are to be determined by revenue management and marketing and the collaboration of the data. But to say, okay, we're going to feature weekend deals with breakfast at the rate that we want, because we know that they're willing to pay the rate, being that we've already researched that component. And we're offering it now as an don't forget, uh, plan now, don't lose your chance. This was a time that people wanted because of XYZ events and or XYZ things that are going on. And to take advantage of this offer because we knew that Google paid ads were the feature point of this particular market being Boston for this particular time, the 2 weeks of November, for this particular discovery time starting in August. Okay. So, first, from a marketing perspective, once that's been outlined, my first conversation in paid advertisement is awareness to the time of year that we're talking. It's going to be golden at the beginning of November. It's going to have this kind of fun stuff. It's just awareness. The ads are about awareness. We're here. We're here where you want to be. You may have stayed with us before. Don't miss out on your chance to enjoy the magic of Boston when blah, blah, blah happens. That's it. We're not at this point discussing the value proposition of the offer. We're discussing the value proposition of the interest in the time that the offer is in. The landing page, which is a critical component of any marketing strategy, any ad is really a function of action. It goes to a place that then fills in all the details that people need to make the decision of acquisition. So the first marketing plan in August, which is our earliest discovery that we looked at from the traffic historically for this program, would be this is what we are thinking about. This is a magic time. This is the don't forget this is you did it before. It's a great time to come here. Remember it and enjoy it. And all the lingo that we associate with of the rebirth of travel, whatever verbiage you would like. And I'm not going to go into talking verbiage. That's a content duration conversation. We will have on another show, actually. So we talk about it. Then that program runs until it gets, we'll get some conversions, but mostly we'll get traffic. Be honest with you. The ROI is not the value proposition of the conversion at that time, although we'll get some. It's more about the awareness and the continued interest in what we continue to talk about. That brings us into our September discussion. And the September discussion begins to introduce them to the offerings and the packages more pronounced and upfront than we were from our August program. Our September program is getting to the education portion for the people who are involved in. I'm aware of this going on. I'm aware of my interest in this. That's the discovery phase. That was in the August activities. But now I'm into the education process, which is I need to know where, if my choices of staying, how they relate to what I'm interested in doing, as also too, what is it that the value is in relationship to the other values being offered in the market. This is the education process, the comparison analysis. This is my option one at this hotel. This is my option two at that hotel. Well, how does it relate to where I want to be, what I want to do, what are the value propositions of these things? That's the September where the offer is being put in the forefront of the discussion. Then that goes into what we now get up to where revenue management was before, and that is the prime booking window. This is the conversion points. This is when we solidly push into the market value and cost and opportunity and acceptance of what we are offering in comparison to everybody else, the value of what it represents in comparison to what you would normally have to pay or pay with other people, and the value of our location in its prime to exactly the things of that window of time that we're talking about for the first 2 weeks of November. So, what to recap, to talk about this in a microcosm of our talking about a successful marketing strategy for fourth quarter, we did a microcosm of saying retroactively looking at 4 years worth of data and creating an average weighted mean. We determined in general what our overall ADR, length of stay requirements, and sources geographically of business. We then define that according to the value, according to our goal, whether it's ADR or occupancy, an ADR component that we said based on that, there's certain geographic areas that have a higher propensity for higher rates. We defined it by example by saying, let's say it's Boston, And we then defined it to say that if we were looking for to expand business for the first 2 weeks of November, what data points do we know? Aggregated wise, from a revenue management perspective, we know booking window, which is prime opportunity of conversion, arrival, duration, and departures. Those dates go back forward. We made the example that there was a 21-day book window for this. So that means that people were at their prime of booking for staying in the 1st of November, starting the first week of October. That ended our revenue management data to the point of what revenue management purely could offer. And then we expanded it to a marketing strategy that said, okay, what does marketing know? And marketing can go into the traffic patterns historically, again, saying aggregate of past 4 years, 3 years really, um, as a weighted mean for the fourth quarter to say, okay, during this time, we saw that people started coming to our website for that come August. We saw that they were in that discovery phase at as far back as August, 60 days. From that, they went into an education phase, which was 30 days prior to the booking window. Then they went into the prime booking window. So from that, we know that we wanted to target Boston because of their propensity for ADR. We took a hard look at exactly from Boston what channel was the most productive historically over the 3-year average mean that we created. Saw that Google Paid was the most likely channel that was highest value to it, that was used most and had the best conversion out of comparisons of other channels like CRM, email management, paid social, organic social, what have you. And so we developed a campaign that said, for August, we're going to talk about all the cool stuff that early November is like, whether it's event driven or not. And we said that weekends were the primary focus from what we understood our data to be in the first 2 weeks of November. So our focus was about weekend stuff. We made that statement of brand and awareness of our product in market during the discovery phase that people have in Boston in August. We then transitioned that conversation of our ad campaigns into more of an introduction to what we were offering for that time window in November. That was in September. We then made it a total dedicated ad campaign during the peak conversion windows about what we're offering for those 2 weeks in November. That's one example. That's just for one example of one time frame. Each of those, that string of stuff happens progressively in the time segments that are most relevant. I only picked a 2 week section because it's an example to refer to. You can first look at it from a higher perspective, like we did for all of fourth quarter, and aggregate those numbers and average those numbers. But we know within your fourth quarter, there are highlights that create different demands. Holidays, as we pointed out, is one of the key components of that. And because of that, other times other than the holidays don't merit effort because the conversion value of the traffic that it costs to get to it isn't worth it. There's a cost loss analysis, a diminished value of return that you have to calculate in that says we would desperately want to have business in the first 2 weeks of November. The reality is that the demand to market is not sufficient unless you can steal the business market share from your competitors because you can offer an equitable product and they're not doing it as well as you could do it for yourself. Then don't do it, because that's where you save, or it's, the analogy, keep your powder dry to spend the money when you have the best opportunity to convert it. I'm not saying you shut down marketing. I'm saying your marketing is more about what its value proposition in the future tense. If you can't sell silver dollars for 50 cents on the corner, don't sell them. Don't give them away. If you can't sell your first 2 weeks of November, during your 2 weeks in November doesn't mean you don't market. It means that you're marketing more for what January is doing for you. And it's all about stealing and gathering market share to the demand that you have. It's a consistent discussion. Can you create demand? I think it's been tested because we have been able to create demand. We've created awareness that didn't exist for things that people didn't know, and hence the demand for people to come see it. And so we created the demand. However, unless you got that kind of uniqueness that you can bring to yourself, you're really not able to create demand unless you can find something that creates the value of attention to do so. So I'm drinking more coffee. So fourth quarter, I give you an example of just taking a hypothetical for the first 2 weeks focus on November. If you were to look at it, I would say if you've not done this strategically before, look at the quarter in its entirety and identify the highlights of the quarter. Holidays being the easiest, events and local things of interest that you know exist being the second easiest, and the third being your natural business cycle of when do you think people do come, for what reasons they come, and how does that break down into your business cycle? Weekends, weekdays, certain weeks of the year, of the month versus others, whatever that breakdown is. So those are your three tiers of potential targeting. From that, then look at your total data source availability. What do you have as data that can be used? Is it something that you can dive into? If you're a brand hotel, it's incredibly difficult to get this kind of data out of your folios. It doesn't exist really, unless you're keeping a separate set of data that helps you understand your data sourcing. It's very hard to extract a lot of this data, and certainly you can't go find out the CRM data as easily as you used to about geographies. And web analytics doesn't exist, and you can spend weeks chasing down your brand to get some sort of data that turns out to be generalized anyway. And I know it's not negative, but it's the reality of, unfortunately, a lot of things when it comes to brand and brand data. If you're an independent, you have greater latitude. But if you haven't set it up to gather this kind of data, you're just as blind as a brand hotel because you haven't looked for this type of data before. So you're not tracking this type of data. So if you're not doing that, you need to step in and lean in and do that now. You need to track the types of data that are high value to you. And that being, what do they do when they come to your website? How do you track what's called events and goals? What do they click on when they come to a certain page? What is their process when they go into your website? What is the pages they go to? What is the content that they engage with? That helps you understand. It also means you should track what they do on your website. Something I've been doing for years is, if you think about it, your website, when somebody comes to it and you have proper analytics, just even actually improper analytics, you just have Google Analytics, which is free. It'll tell you geographically where they were at when they were looking at your website. So you have geographic source of interest. If they go to your website, you have that time stamped as to the date that they were looking at your website. So you know geographically where they're located and then the day they were looking at you. If you track the dates they put into your booking window, which is a widget on your website that is transferred over to your booking engine, internet booking engine, you can track those dates that are put into your booking window out of requests of interest. So now you have three very critical components of data. You have where were they located, when were they looking at you, and what were they looking for. That's incredible value data that you can use, because if you extract that data, and this isn't rocket science, this is Excel sheets that you can use. If you extract that data, you can see a lead time of where they were geographically to when they were interested with you. So going back to my earliest example about Boston, if you took those 3 points of data, where they were, the day they were interested, and the dates they were interested in, and you put that into a kind of a heat map, okay, using Tableau or some other platform like that, easy enough. Um, you could see geographically the amount of interest. Okay, a little balloon that blows up geographically, map of the United States. Here's a little balloon showing out of Atlanta, big balloon compared to a littler balloon in Philadelphia. But they would show you also their historical ADRs, what they were looking for as well. So anyway, digress. 3 points of data just for this point. Geographically, we know that certain places have a higher demand. If we created the date spread that said, okay, if I make this little slider over here that says I'm interested in who was interested in staying with me the first 2 weeks of November, going with our current example, we'd have a balloon that pops up over Boston. Okay. So that means, and we'd see that Boston is 87 days out. They start looking at our website, looking for dates in November, 87 days out. Wow, okay. So we know that if we advertise at least 87 days out, okay, at that point, they're already familiar with our property and know enough to even look at our property, which means that they're already in the education phase. Okay, 87 days out. So if we start putting advertisement out there, okay, 87 days out in the Boston market, instead of just generally everywhere else, just, hey, let's dedicate ourselves to the Boston market. Likelihood is we're going to have people that are interested in us because they're already aware of us. And all we have to do is make sure they're giving them a value for what they should be interested in. And we can then look at, based on those dates of interest that they have, what they're interested in. Is our historical data says, well, that's usually weekend time. People come weekend time because we have this event that's coming up there, or this event coming up there, or it's that time of year that this happens, whatever. And now we have a purpose and a reason. This goes to a much larger conversation, but that we're not going to have a lot of time to talk today about, but we certainly can add that into future dialogue. And that is, how do you create content that fishes this out as well? Um, a lot of places will do things to do pages. Here's 10 things to do in our market. And they check a box that says, yep, we have information about our local market. What you have is a shotgun spaghetti on a wall. And if people visit that page, and if you even have a goal tracking or event tracking of people even visiting your page, okay, you don't know what they're there for because you got 10 items to choose from of why they're there. So this is where the value of Google Analytics comes in, because when they took away our keyword tracking years ago, they gave us attribution strings. Attribution strings show us the progression of people's engagement with all of our points of contact of website, social, what have you, in a progression that shows the highest value of conversion. So that based on this progression of attribution, this is how much they converted with you. This is where they went to the button that said buy something. Okay. Now, if taking our example, you have things to do and there's 10 items there. Okay. And you look at your attribution modeling in Google and it says, well, they went to your paid advertisement, they went to your website, they went to your social platform, and they went to your paid social ad, and then they converted. Okay. Fortunately, all of those points of data can be used if you know which point of data they touched. Which ad campaign did they hit? And that comes from you properly tracking your campaign structure in your UTM, which says this is campaign X on platform Y, campaign such and such. So now you know what that attribution point is. Okay, my paid campaign was about the Arts Fest. Okay, they went to that. Where did they go organically? Well, if you have proper tracking in place on your website, you see that they came to your website and went to your events page. And on your events page is the Arts Fest. Okay. So you know that that page now, out of the 10 items that you were there, the Arts Fest was the reason why this attribution string used that organic touch. They went to your social platform. Okay. What did they do on social platform? Well, when they went to your social platform, you have a social organic post about the Arts Fest coming up. That must be where they went. Now, the paid social is because it retargeted them because they saw that post, that they went and saw the information you had about the Arts Fest offer because you put an offer on social media about the Arts Fest package, whatever. So now that attribution string has value because now you understand that they went to your page on 10 things to do in your market because the Arts Fest takes the Art Fest content and expand it. Make a page for it because now it's more important than the other 9 items are in this particular case, worthy of having additional content because now that content page is what you use to target your paid advertisement towards. Instead of your paid advertisement just saying, here's our 10 things to do in market, hoping that one of them sticks, in this case, the Arts Fest, you're instead saying, hey guys, we have an Arts Fest that's really cool and you want to go see it. Look at our page. And on the page, you explain all the cool stuff that you are providing as a value proposition related to the Arts Fest. Things not to miss, things to do, your proximity to it, restaurants to eat at, places to go to, retailers that participate, whatever is of value, you put on that page. Because now what you're doing is you're educating and communicating with your guest so that they truly understand why they should stay with you for what you have to offer with what they're interested in. It's like a game of 20 questions. You don't know what the person has until you ask the right question. But you can't ask the right question unless you know what it is that you need to ask about. So, what we have to provide is a method of discovery for our guests. We have to communicate. We have to ask, is this what you're interested in? Is this what you want? If not, what is it that I can help with? Maybe I have and also to be truthful and not try to be something you're not and say, oh, yeah, I can do that for you. I'm right next to the Art Fest. When you're by the airport and the Art Fest is on the other side of the town that's between you and there's something else. So being truthful with the content is just as important because it also has a negative backlash that if they're convinced that you're the place to go to, only to find out that they picked poorly and that you were the least likely place to go to, then that bodes poor for you because that's how the review what gets posted is these guys are told they're not anywhere near the Art Fest. They had this Art Fest package. They told them they were close to it, and this, and this, and it's on the other side of town. It took me forever to get over there. It was a real total pain in the butt. I'll never stay here again. And it may have not been anything to do with your product. The hotel might have been clean and fine, and service was good, but what you sold it for was wrong. And because of that, it's reflected in the feedback. So remember, there's a tail end to this conversation too. It's just not a set and forget that once you sell it, you're done. It's about what happens after the sale. Did you fulfill on the execution of what was promised? Did you fulfill what it is that you said you were going to do? And more importantly, did you continue the communication with them to make sure that nothing got missed in that process? Because again, we're not omnipotently knowing what everything the guest wants. So unless we ask, we won't know. Unless we discover with them what it is that we can help them with, they won't know what we have to offer. So it's all intertwined with creating this fourth quarter strategy because, especially with fourth quarter, unlike other quarters, we have certain events that are highlighted. As we said, the easiest thing to point out about fourth quarter is the holiday cycle. That's the easiest thing to point out. It is a defining difference of it in comparison to the other 3 quarters. Not that the other 3 quarters don't have holidays within them as well, but the fourth quarter is synonymous with very strong, very large holidays. We have four really that are keynote, and we're not even talking about religious diversification when it comes to these holidays. We're talking about Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. Those are four key elements that exist as a primary core. Now you start talking about Hanukkah, and you got a fifth. And then you start talking about other holidays for other religious interests, and you have even more, six, seven, and eight. Okay, all of these have value propositions to people. All of them, you can do Day of the Dead. It depends on your demographic and ethnic mix as to the demand to your market as to what you highlight. There's a wide variety of opportunities for that. But with that comes the truth and what you're marketing yourself for. What are you offering? Are you just hijacking the holiday name and saying, I got a Christmas special, when in fact there's nothing special about it? If you have a Christmas special, identify the value proposition of it. Bring them to a page that gives content to them to identify the value that you are saying you're giving to them. I don't want to miss the chance in this closing minutes of our discussion today to discuss certain features about fourth quarter that are uniquely valuable that don't have the same value proposition in the other quarters. And that is gift cards. Gift cards and loyalty programs. Loyalty programs have been drastically maligned for good reasons because they're not loyalty programs. Brand loyalty programs aren't loyalty programs, they're frequency programs. And they have diminished their value tremendously. And it does no good for CEOs of brands such as Marriott to refer to the fact that their reward program is owner based, meaning the value proposition of the membership program is towards those that own the hotels, meaning less cost, more revenue, than to the consumer, which is more value, less cost. And for to willfully point that out is to just say, why are you doing that and killing the value proposition that you are preluding that you offer when you're not? We know airline programs. We know there's a brand agnostic value in our society now. None of us are like, I'm a true and blue XYZ brand follower. I don't only stay there and I don't stay anywhere else. We're not. We have a loyalty programs in every platform for every reason. It's like pick a card, any card. I'm going there. Okay, so if I'm going there, let me compare what my loyalty value is that I can use and see which one it is. Then see whether it even influences um, my choice. It might not even influence my choice because they're so diluted in value. It's not. What, I'm going to get a free bottle of water if I show up the 10th time? No, thanks. I can go to Costco and get one for 25 cents. It is not worth it to me. And when you start telling with some of the basic travel demands right now, where limited service hotels are doing wonderful because of the cost value proposition they represent, because of the skyrocketing rates we're offering or asking for, there is no brand value to it because there's no room to upgrade and no concierge service to provide. And there's no amenity product that's in there that's able to be offered. So for that reason, what am I getting for my brand value as a loyalty reward? That all being said, brand and loyalty and membership are high value, especially for independent hotels, if you don't make it in the same construct that you see exampled by brands. Frequency programs for independent hotels don't work. I may not be in your market enough to value or warrant the need for me to sign up for you. The only reason why I may sign up for you is a little bit of what Hilton tried, which was sign up and get a different rate. Okay. Hilton squandered that. They didn't do anything with that. They made you sign up, and as soon as you sign up and get your rate, you canceled back out because they didn't offer anything else with it. It was like, okay, now that you get my information, so you give me a lower rate. Thank you. I don't get anything else from you, so let me just unsubscribe so I have one less stupid newsletter to get because I don't need it. I'll sign back up again if I need a discount again. So, as well intended as it might have been, it was poorly executed. That being said, again, and I'm sorry to keep you redundant on it, but loyalty relationships for your hotel can be valuable if you provide value for it. It's a cost factor from the hotel. It's a cost factor to create loyalty and lifetime value of a guest. It's going to cost a hotel to give what it is that they give to give a value to the guests that they want it, and then will put you in a higher consideration should they come back to market again, or to make a choice to come back to you in comparison to other markets. So it's going to cost you. And it costs a lot less to do that stuff than it does to go and find a new guest. It's a math that most people don't consider. To acquire a new guest is infinitely more expensive, infinitely is over dramatization, a much higher expense than to retain a current guest by giving them value to their relationship with you. And from so doing, it's more affordable to keep in communication with your current guests than it is to continue to solicit for new guests. So for that reason, loyalty relationships exist on an intrinsic need to redeem immediately value relationship. By signing up with me and giving the ability for me to communicate directly with you, here's a value, here's something. I've done things what's called reverse gift memberships, where everybody that comes through a alternate channel, OTAs or so forth, I immediately gave them the second highest tier of a membership program we had, which gave them reward values and so forth and so on. The trick to it was if they wanted to keep that status for the second year, they would have to have gone over and come back to our hotel based on whatever frequency we created and or whatever spend that they had or whatever duration of time that they spent with us. We gave them three options with this. So if they liked having that uniqueness of relationship where they got the upgrades and the amenities and the discounts and everything else that we provided them gratis the first year, then they'll make it a point to come so that they can enjoy it a second year. And then, of course, the onus is on our operations team to make sure that we fulfill the promise of service and product. So all departments work together in that collaboration. The other is gift cards. There are some really cool programs that are out there. I've used some. One I want to refer to in some ways, and this is not an endorsement per se, as it is just a familiarity of using, is Ackroo, ACKROO. They weren't built for hospitality, but we have found a great usage for them in the sense that that there are certain PMS systems and POS systems that they integrate with, which means that it's easier for the frontline employees to engage with people. That if they buy gift certificates or awarded gift certificates, there's a electronic version of it that goes out, or they can send a tangible plastic card, logoed and everything correspondingly, if that's a preference to send out. And gift cards are a huge value proposition. Several clients over several years have generated in the seven-figure ranges gift certificate sales of high value because a lot of times, especially in our given time of presence, buying the perfect gift is very challenging, especially for people that we're not as intimately familiar with, but it's easy to buy a gift card, hence the gift card business. But for some, not knowing, some people don't need things as much as they need, but, don't need to buy grandpa and grandma another shirt, but they can buy them a nice weekend at their favorite hotel and or destination, and you're it. And you can give them that, and you can give them in the gift certificate program. There's longhand ways of doing this, where the old sending out a mailing of a card or something, and it has to be brought in and signed and changed, and that's a challenge. It slows down your front desk process. It creates accounting issues, inconsistencies, and fraud. Now, a program like Acro or those like it allow for a higher efficiency where it's sent, it's done. We can send a physical card if they want to, or we can just send them an email that they share over, whatever it is that the preference of the purchaser. Plus, we can give value proposition to them as well, like buy this much and you get some for yourself, kind of thing. All that exists. Well, if you sell a tremendous amount of value for that, and it's depending upon your municipality as to how you redeem it, how long you have to hold it for. Those are all things you have to be aware of when you do these programs. But incredible value for fourth quarter because you're satisfying a need of saying, wow, wouldn't it be great if we send grandma, grandpa, or mom and dad, or aunt and uncle, or whoever, a 2-day, 3-day stay at their favorite place at XYZ, and you're the favorite place? Huge value proposition to that. The other is to go over and create an eminent relationship reward for those people that you're dealing with on a daily basis. This is more toned into restaurants, although hotels with restaurants and or hotels that have other amenities and or value proposition for frequency of people traveling because of, again, roadside travel between point A and point B, and you're the point in the middle. You can provide a frequency program and so forth. And there's platforms like Rewardsly that allows you to go over and create programs like for your restaurant that is the typical multi-frequency punch card, from the days gone by, where you eat 3 or 4 lunches, you get the fifth one free. There's processes like that. They work with PMS systems, and then they don't work with POS systems. This one, it works outside of a POS system. This is a self-contained one. Makes it easy. It's QR code based. It automatically enrolls people. It keeps track of people. You can incentivize them, and you can sell gift cards for them that they keep on their phone. They can walk in and redeem. You give them value propositions, relationship values to them. There's programs we've talked about on our podcast before called That's Biz that allows for immediate redemptions of offers for people that are in relationship with you or not in relationship with you, that are just simply following you on social. There's lots of good functional tools, especially for the holiday period for fourth quarter, where as you have more and more families going to travel for holidays, other than the large dining events of a Thanksgiving or something, you have a lot of breakfasts and lunches that for people being in market, especially if they grew up there, they're going to go see friends. They want to meet them somewhere. They want to do something. They don't want to burden mom and dad or grandma and grandpa for making breakfast and lunch and dinner for everybody. So a lot of families will want to go out, catch a breakfast, Waffle House, and then go off to such and such. Why not you? Why not be you? Why not be your restaurant? Why not be your event? Why not be your amenities at your hotel and offer them value propositions that they can pre-purchase? This also goes in lines with the fact that as you go over and know that people are staying for length of stays and you have amenities that you can offer, that you can go over and give them a discount offering pre-arrival, pre-purchase, saying, "Hey, we'll give you $100 value to our restaurant for $75. You're gonna have breakfast with us anyway. Might as well discount it." So you have value propositions you can offer. So lots of values to this. We ran through our time of an hour. I sincerely appreciate the fact that you spent time with me today. Um, our discussion, of course, was how to create a successful fourth quarter strategy. I think we've hit on some, if not quite a few, of the highlights of how to approach it, some of the targeting that you're capable of doing, some of the metrics that you're capable of, and some of the data that you should be using to calculate this, and some of the tools that you can use to derive success with some strategies associated with fourth quarter. The key element that I want to leave you all with is that it is towards the end of September already, and even from my current example I made from you, you're 60 days late on your impact of things as early as November. So there's no time like the present to start if you haven't already started or worked on it. I know that everyone's in a lot of budget seasons and so forth, and uncertainty principles and data that isn't relevant, and trying to figure out what to commit to. The chaos theory of not knowing what to plan for when you don't know what it is that you have to plan for, things like this. But please keep in mind, it is a transition to process. This is our new normal. It is our normal. It's not a new normal. It's our normal now. This is how we have to approach. We have construed data that is going to forever affect our future tense data for quite a while. And from it, we have to learn how to adapt ourselves to more dynamic relationship with how do we approach these projects without the refinement of such continuous historical data to refer back to. So with that, my name is Loren Gray. Thank you for the privilege of your time and listening to me today. We will re-simulcast this show 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Sydney, Australia time, 11:30 a.m. EU time. Of course, we are simulcasted on everything from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and also on our TV channel, which is hospitalitychannel.tv and talktravel.tv. We're on Roku, Google, Roku TV, Amazon Prime, Google Play, and Apple TV. Just look for Hospitality Channel. We always present this show on the free live side, but there's a subscription service that we're enhancing and adding a whole bunch of content to. For instance, we're launching 2 training programs that will be on the TV channel, just real quickly. One is teaching hospitality to non-hospitality people. As mysterious as sometimes our industry is, it's not often understood by people that have never worked in our industry, and they don't understand how we identify ourselves, segment ourselves, and departmentalize ourselves. So there's a training program that we're going to be offering come October. That is a training program on the TV channel that you can get, or it'll be on our hospitalitymarketing.club, which is to learn what hospitality is, learn all the methodologies that we use within our industry. So as a marketer or person that's trying to provide services to hospitality, you learn how we run our industry had you not had the privilege of working within our industry. And the second training program that we're going to have is fundamental marketing. Literally how to create and construct a lot of what we're talking about on the show in a more factual, functional, learn, progress, get quizzed, progress kind of way, but not just basic marketing, but strategic marketing. As discussed before, there are other talented resources to learning the fundamentals, the textbook stuff, the basic stuff, paid, earned, and owned media kind of concepts. But this is about strategies. How do you, just like we talk about on the show, use Facebook or use Google paid ads in an objective goal for marketing? I'm looking to drive more occupancy, or I'm looking to drive more revenue, or whatever it is. How do you actually build the campaign structures to reach that goal? How do you create the KPIs, the goals, the objectives, and so forth? So more training to come on the way that we represented on the TV channel should you wish to subscribe, and also within our hospitalitymarketing.club program. So with that, thank you all again, and sincerely appreciate your time. We look forward to talking to you next week, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, US. Until then, have a great and wonderful week. And putting it right on the page, so that if there'll be the Dean page, there'll be the Adele page, well, meta search, reputation management.
And the videos too, right?
Now the videos we're actually putting on, the videos of yours we're putting into the linear one, So the hospitalchannel.tv is, there's a linear TV program that's 7 days a week. It plays according to what I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. You're going to be put into that. I have little commercials that I have in there now. You're watching Hospitality TV.